I'm Ryan Robinson, the Altimetric Colliders Community Associate. And if you aren't familiar with Altimetric, it is a digital transformation company. Um, in other words, we help companies stay ahead of the curve in technology. We help them source innovation amongst their teams. So yeah, it's a great company to work for. We are actually looking to hire. So I will drop some links in the chat so that you can check out our LinkedIn. Specifically, Altimetric Collider is the community facing side of the company. And we just try to increase and enhance and rev up the greater tech community like you all. And we have people, awesome people like Kevin that are our friends so that we can, just always share thought leadership and keep the tech community growing.
Yeah, and we used to do these in person before COVID at the Collider in Detroit. So kind of the main event today is under the Airtable here. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a patient-facing FHIR app. Hey, Jerome Dixon, you want to introduce yourself? And you got the mic.
Okay, sure. Yes, so I'm a PhD student in Richmond, Virginia at VCU.
Cool.
So I'm doing personalized medicine, pharmacogenomic type patient engagement apps. And so VCU is actually switching from Cerner to Epic. And so Epic looks to be a lot more open as far as doing some of the app development stuff. So I'm just trying to learn and see what I can actually do, once VCU does switch, as well as places that don't have the big EHR systems. How else can we tap into, patient portals and that sort of thing? So,
cool. Yeah, and there's also on patient.dev, there's a Epic patient-facing FHIR thing. I have a link for it in today's Notion. So some of the more specific Epic stuff I could direct you to.
Okay.
Cool. Well, thanks for that. Amit, you want the mic for a second?
Sure. Yeah. So I work for CVS Minute Clinic, and we're utilizing Epic. So I'm working both on the Epic interfaces and also MIRS Connect integration engine. And right now we are not really, at least the project I'm working on for CVS, we're not utilizing FHIR. It's all like HL7 or like X12 for financial transaction. But I really hope in the future we'll start using FHIR more. I don't expect it to replace all the legacy interfaces, but maybe like newer interfaces. So, I want to get on with the program and learn more how to use it.
Yeah, and if you go to FHIR.epic.com, because we're not going to do specifically FHIR today or Epic today, but there's like a ton, all their different resources and whatnot are outlined there. It's really helpful. But thanks for introing yourself, and we'll move on to Nick. You got the mic for a minute or two there, Nick.
Hey everybody, I'm the product manager over here at a civic technology firm called Belize Technologies. And a lot of the work that we do is around reducing burden for quality reporting systems. And a lot of the work across the board in CMS is modernizing systems so that those organizations, the provider organizations, there's not so much overhead in reporting on quality and then subsequently improving on quality. So I'm really passionate about the work, and I really want to collaborate with people to kind of crack this nut and make it really easy to do.
Cool. Yeah, and there have been a few people from CMS who have joined from time to time. You guys are really pushing FHIR at the agency, as far as I can tell. Like when we were in person with Asymmetric in outside of Baltimore, like I remember some of the folks from CMS came over. That was like 1.5 years ago or so. But yeah, thanks for joining. It's great. Scott Olson, you want to take the mic for a minute or two?
Yeah, sure. So I'm with Wayne State University. I'm on the business side, but I work with faculty members and grad students helping commercialize their technologies.
Oh,
And we've been doing a bunch of stuff with extended reality over the last couple of years, and using AI to both with vision systems as well as with telemedicine. So all of it begins to bump into patient records. And so we're trying to figure out the best ways to do that to stay up on top of the resources.
cool. Cool. That's awesome. I was wondering what XR was, and it's extended reality, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Hey, Dr. Rao.
Hey, Kevin, Beju here. So I actually, work to integrate AI and data into provider and patient facing applications. So that's what I do primarily. We work with providers primarily, but now we are trying to enter the patient space also.
Cool. Well, I hope I'm not encroaching in your territory today.
No.
Turn me off.
There is room for everyone. So.
Yeah, there is. Cool.
Thank you.
Hey, Warren, you want to take the mic for a minute?
Sure. Hi. Thank you.
Hi.
I'm Warren Lin. I just joined a company called, I forgot to put my contact information in it, and called Amida Technology Group in DC. And the company is working mainly is related in the healthcare field. And I just joined the company about less than 3 months. And one of the projects I just got off is they asked me to do a FHIR work because we have a contract with a company. They need to implement this CMS FHIR mandate.
Oh, yes, the CMS interoperability rule. Yes.
So I did the one is to implement those planet profiles.
Gotcha.
So just did this. It's pretty new to me. So
Cool.
I worked at the healthcare, application, more than 10 years ago. But it's, things have changed quite a bit. Back then, there was no FHIR.
Yeah.
We'll work a little bit on the X12 and H12.7. So I just kind of get back to this field. So it's, to work in healthcare related application. That's cool. So I joined this group, try to get some new knowledge and refresh my, the knowledge in this field.
Excellent, Warren. Thanks for joining. Hey, Will, do you want the mic for a minute?
Well, no, I wasn't thinking that I wanted the mic for a minute, but since I got it, my name is Will Norat. I'm a solutions development analyst over at in Baltimore for the St. Agnes Hospital, employed by Ascension Technologies, and I'm kind of the boots on the ground kind of thing where I do a little bit of everything, from troubleshooting background job servers not working to doing the patching. We work in the I work in the Meditech arena for Meditech client server and Magic for a few different ministries, from like Amida Health down to Kansas Keswick.
Cool. Yeah, I think
So anyway, that's it.
like Greenfield or something like that. They call it like their FHIR thing is like Greenfield or something like that.
I'm not sure, and that's what I want to find out. I want to, because I think that this FHIR thing looks like it looks like the future to me. So let me take a look at it and see what it does.
Cool. Yeah, I think they call it Greenfield. I was looking at it myself. I've never done it. Never done the Meditech variety.
Yeah, I know we have the RESTful API servers that are deployed in various locations, and I just want to see what the front end on that looks like. And so this
seeing a lot of a lot of EHR vendors following Epic's example of having the marketplace model. So.
Kind of like App Orchard for everyone. Cool. Well, thanks, Will. Hey, Venkat, you want to take the mic for a minute?
Yeah, hi, folks. I work primarily I work for a HISP, which is a Health Information Service Provider. So we do work in the interoperability space. We implement the direct protocol. I don't know if anybody knows about that, but that's primarily based on S/MIME that enables exchange of information between providers, payers, and even patients. So we are looking at using FHIR to enable some of those information exchange flows, especially the CMS mandate, and so that's my interest primarily.
Well, thanks for joining, Venkat.
Sure, thank you, guys.
Ronaldo, I might be mispronouncing that. I'm sorry.
No, you did perfect. So hi. Getting all set up here. So yes, hi. So I'm from Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin, and I just started working for a company called My Choice Wisconsin, and they're a provider for healthcare, a healthcare provider for Medicare and Medicaid. So my job duty basically is to help with implementing the FHIR interoperability. So I'm learning everything as quick as possible. I have some background. I have background in database, but no background in the health part. So it's a lot of learning right now.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining, Ronaldo.
Thanks.
And David.
Hey, Kevin, and hey, everyone. So my name is David. I hail from Richmond, Virginia, just recently moved from DC. So I am a pharmacist by trade, product manager right now for a health tech company. Before I was a data analyst, QA engineer, project manager, doing the whole gambit. So right now I'm kind of focused around thinking about FHIR as a potential integration for us, but I just don't know too much about it in terms of, well, the business side aspect of it, the cost, the developments, and then the interaction with these hospitals. So just wanted to join the group to be able to get a better understanding around all that stuff.
Cool. Yeah, kind of learn by osmosis there. Excellent. Okay, and I think that's everyone who wanted to introduce themselves. So you can go to this page if you want to kind of link up with somebody who has a similar interest. You could use the chat, you could use this page if they put their email. I was just thinking, sometimes we don't know each other because we're not in person, and this was an attempt to kind of, make some connections there. So FHIR has like patient-facing, provider-facing, and like this B2B system integration that you can do. I think the patient-facing stuff is super interesting because you as a patient can go and essentially like make an app for yourself using your own medical data. And you could potentially make an app for like a friend or a family member who has like some kind of health problem. And you're able to connect these in real time to EHRs, right? So like Epic's the best example is if you go to fhir.epic.com, you can create an app and you can get it, access enabled in over 300 Epic clients, like within 24 hours. It's actually kind of amazing. Now, it's not like you can go and access like people's medical data that you don't know. It's just people who want to use your app and authorize that app to use their medical data. So when I was thinking about this, I thought it'd be interesting to kind of add an API to an API, if you want to say it that way, which is, FHIR is an API, and then AI and machine learning very much nowadays seems like, kind of like this API resource that you can hit and do some interesting stuff with. So today, what we're going to kind of imagine is a patient who wants to connect their medical records to AI to figure out what medical conditions are documented about them. And we're going to use the quote unquote state-of-the-art AI with AWS Medical Comprehend. If you want to call it state-of-the-art. It's an interesting technology that there's just this API that AWS has that you can throw free text at, and it'll start doing interesting things with it. To give you an example of what we're going to build today, it's basically going to be this as a web page. So it's going to be a little web app. It's going to have like a little picture here, and it's going to say, hey, I'm this robot. I did it. Here are my thoughts. And what it's going to do is essentially take the output from AWS Medical Comprehend and put it in a table here, right? So you're going to have like a bunch of entities like altered mental status, and then like, hey, it's a medical condition, it's a diagnosis name, I guess, and this is like some kind of confidence score about it. And you can go and look down here, and I'll show you AWS Medical Comprehend in a little bit, but this is kind of what we're shooting to do. It's going to be a patient who, and this is how we're going to make it actually. So there's going to be a link for our app or web app, and the link is going to start an OAuth 2 workflow that's going to allow a patient to log in using their patient portal username and password. Then it's going to allow them to authorize this app to connect to their documents. Those documents one of those documents can go up to AWS, and it's going to do the medical comprehend thing, and then it's going to have the results come down to the app, and it's going to make that table. So that's the basic overflow of what we're going to do today. Web app, hit a link, patient authorizes, patient logs in, patient authorizes, get a document, send it up to the cloud, display whatever the cloud gives you back, okay? So any questions about that kind of broad overview? We're going to go into comprehend briefly, but if anyone wants to speak up for a second or type something in the chat. Oh, I see in the chat Zaid joined. Zaid has been with the meetup since the very beginning. He's been a great meetup member. So thanks for joining.
Thanks. So just in general, because my app does a lot of AI, natural language processing.
Yep.
So there's really, as you have it here in the workflow, this would work perfectly for what it can do. The problem, so if anyone is thinking that if you were to speak versus type, and that becomes the problem. So when you use a Siri or you use an Alexa or you use anything else as a front end to capture the dictation, you're dealing with the problem of that speech recognition, speech to text will do what it believes. So you'll get, unlike if you were to type it, like, so when you get it from the text record, right? You do your FHIR call, you get the text record, you're getting something far more closer to what Comprehend can understand, rather than having a Siri or a Google Voice service translate that into what it thinks, because its vocabulary is fundamentally different. It's going to be using natural English words. So you're always going to have this a problem. Who is processing your text before you send it to your domain-specific NLP? Anyways, that was.
Gotcha. Yeah,
I have something to add to that, which is we tested this on our eConsult platform at my previous organization. And like Zaid said, everything that Amazon does is trained on a certain data set.
Yes.
And in eConsults, it's a doctor-to-doctor communication. The tense between two doctors is fundamentally different than their training data set. And so comprehensibility to actually understand what's going on, like in this context, is not there. So it was an interesting use case for them as well to kind of observe.
Yep. Yeah, and my impression of using, part of this was for me to actually go, and I had known about AWS Medical Comprehend for a while and never used it. And it was like a good excuse to actually try to use it. And it doesn't seem to perform as well as you'd hope, right? And some of that's based on like what it's trained on, right?
But for what it does, I mean, and I really appreciate this. So just as you helped us with the FHIR resources for COVID, determining what the COVID vaccines were taken, right? So that's going to appear in a global release next month, hopefully. And so this is also fabulous for what it can do. And so this is just amazing, and I really appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks, Dave. I see Raj also joined from HealthWiz, and he's been with Meetup from the very beginning as well. And was asking a question. I don't know if somebody could answer it in the chat.
Yeah, hi, Kevin, this is Raj. So yeah, thank you for Thank you for showing this. One of the questions I had was, and I don't know if anybody has tried to do this, but you know, whenever you get vaccinated, you get this card from CDC. It's like it's got a CDC logo on the right-hand corner. And
Yeah.
I wonder what would happen if you were to send that card as a PDF to Comprehend, you know, and see if it can sort of, you know, attest that this is a you know a legit vaccination card that the user has sent, and then sent back some kind of a authenticated signal that says, "Yep, this is a legit card. And here's a name and all of that."
Yeah. So there is this initiative. You know, you'd have to do some like OCR and stuff like character recognition. There is it health cards?
Yeah, smart health card, right?
Yeah, they're trying to do that. Oh
Yeah.
gosh. But that's what comes to mind, not this, I guess.
Yeah.
Trials of DuckDuckGo, you know, sometimes it just doesn't work.
Hey, Raj, I'm not trying to derail the presentation here. We can connect afterwards, but there's other AI companies with models that you can train, and they're highly functional and performant. And then you'd have to probably build layers on top of it to validate the output of those models. But it's essentially training certain models to understand what is the contents of a health card, and then using some other algorithm to validate that.
That's Nick, right? So yeah, I'll follow up with you, Nick. Thanks.
Cool. All right, so we had some good discussion. So what we're going to do is just look at AWS Medical Comprehend for a second, and then we're going to go into kind of creating this app. All right. So AWS Medical Comprehend, it's a HIPAA eligible NLP service, uses machine learning to get health data from medical text. Cool thing about it is you don't need any machine learning experience, but you know, the bad thing about it is like, you know, how is it trained and how accurate is it, right? I don't get paid by Amazon or anything. I just find it interesting that it exists. There's a little link here if you want to go and check it out. It's kind of like their salesy type page, I guess you would say. Talks about pricing and use cases like cohort analysis, support clinical decisions, improve medical coding and revenue cycle management. One of the more interesting things is if you actually click here and you log into your like AWS account, there'll be another button where you could actually use it without having to know anything about APIs. And it essentially looks like this. Let me see if I can do this here. Usually Notion will like blow it up a little. Even looks worse. Anyway, kind of the interesting thing is if you go there and you log into your AWS account, they have this little thing where you can put some input text and you can just copy and paste something in there and then click analyze. And then it has this like really beautiful schematic of what they're doing. So the input text is patient is an 87-year-old woman, high school teacher with past medical history that includes status post cardiac cath in April 2019. She presents today with palpitations and chest pressure, right? So what it goes through, they're able to say, hey, patient is a 87, and that's an age, is what they think, 87-year-old woman, high school teacher, which is a profession with past medical history that includes status post, which is a time to the procedure name, which is cardiac cath. Apparently there's some overlap or there's some relationship between this time and the cardiac cath in April 2019. So there's a date time and there's some overlap with the cardiac cath. She presents today, which is another time that overlaps with the symptom of palpitations and the symptom, well, I guess it doesn't overlap with the symptom of chest pain. So super beautiful. And like for what it does, it seems pretty awesome. They do make this little like chart here, which essentially is what we're going to replicate inside of our app, where it's like, oh, 87, that's an age, it's protected health information. So that's kind of like a brief overview of AWS Medical Comprehend. So, you know, if you're not like a programming type person and you're like APIs, oh my goodness, you could actually go and use it without knowing anything about APIs, just like copy and paste in some text there. I wouldn't post in actual like patient text unless it's maybe your own and you feel comfortable doing that. But you could actually use it without having to use the API and get some really nice visuals out of it. All right. Any questions about that or comments or? Rishi, are you talking there? I see you. Well, we'll move on then. Okay, so the steps to create AWS Medical Comprehend app with FHIR. So we talked about this, which is we're going to have to launch it from somewhere. We're going to have the patient log in, authorize, get a document, send it up to the cloud, make this little table. So we're going to use Smart Health IT's FHIR sandbox today, not Cerner or Epic. And that's because there's some added steps to using Cerner or Epic. I do have some other videos on how to actually register apps. If you were to create this inside of like an actual EHR, right, what you would need to do is register the app. You need to have the patient log in, patient authorize. The app needs to get a list of documents from a resource called document reference. So within Epic Cerner, there's a resource called document reference, which is a bunch of documents that are about a specific person, right? And we'll see an actual call a little bit later. But if you're looking for free text documents, they're in document reference. Cool thing about the Smart Health IT sandbox that we're using today is that within document reference, it actually has the text. In like Epic and Cerner, sometimes it doesn't. So sometimes your app actually needs to go to something called binary, which is a resource where document reference points to binary and says, hey, the document's actually at binary over there. And then you got to get that binary. A lot of times it's actually a PDF. So then you have to use something like Mozilla's Pdfjs to extract the text out. And then you would send that to Jeff Bezos and AWS Medical Comprehend, right? And then you would render the results. These are some of the workflows. Some of the things we're going to be missing today is registering the app, getting the documents via binary if they happen to be there, and extracting text from a PDF. For prior videos on how to register apps, you could go to this link here. It's one of the videos for registering in Epic, which kind of auto-enables apps across their ecosystem for patients. All righty. Amazon has a product called Textract, but it's not HIPAA compliant. Cool. All right. Any comments before we move on to some of the actual code to do this? All right. So today's code is at this REPL link. So if you want to follow along, it's actually probably the easiest it's ever going to be to follow along is today, because we're using Smart Health IT and you don't need to register and do all this like kind of extra stuff. So if you go to this REPL, if you click it, you might see a page like this if you don't have an account. If you want to create an account, they're free. I don't get anything from REPL. I just think that they have kind of a cool product, so I tend to use it to do these types of things. What you want to do is if you want to follow along and you already have an account, you can click fork. They changed their UI a little recently, so now it kind of looks like this, but you want to click fork and create your own. When you do that, let's see if this will work. When you do that, you should get something that looks similar to this after you fork it. And you have like 3 different areas. There's like some files over here. There's like an editor here, and then there's like a little website renderer thing here. The cool thing about REPL and why I use it a lot for this type of like meetup is it gives you its own little web address here, right? So if you click on this, open in a new tab, this web URL is specific to your site here, right? So if you change something in here, Like, can you find it in your heart to let this lovely robot please read all of your medical information? If so, click here and you add, please. And then you go back over here and it's not there. And now you reload that page. Now it's actually there, right? So I just find it, if you look at a lot of the FHIR tutorials, or at least there's one by Cerner where you got to go to GitHub and then you got to make like a GitHub pages thing. And there's different, it just gets confusing. And this just seems to be the most straightforward. So that's why I use REPL. So in terms of files, to make this work, you got an index file, which is like this little thing where you're going to launch it from. We got a launch.html. And essentially all index.html says is it says go to launch.html and tell it that we're going to use this FHIR server, right? So this is Smart Health IT's FHIR server. You know, like Epic, Cerner, they'll have their own FHIR servers. Usually it'll be something like that looks more like this part that's highlighted as opposed to this big string. Cool thing about Smart Health IT is they let you like add on some stuff to like open it to a specific patient and have like the password pre-filled in, so you don't need to go and track that stuff down. So that's why it looks a little different than maybe what you're used to. But index.html creates this page, which has this link. And the link essentially says, hey, I want you to go to launch.html and tell it to launch this FHIR server. Launch.html is like, that's cool. Like, what's a FHIR server? How do you do that? And essentially that logic is in something called FHIR client. So at this GitHub, there's a JavaScript client put out by Boston Children's that essentially makes the Oauth 2, like if you're trying to do Oauth 2, it makes it kind of go away in essence. It makes it so much easier because all you have to do is say, oh, I need to authorize this patient app. I need to have this patient sign in using your patient portal username password. Oh, that's just FHIR.oauth2.authorize. And you pass it an object. And the object has a client ID. Smart Health IT doesn't care what you tell it for a client ID. It doesn't make you register anything. So you could put anything you want here. You tell it the scopes of what you're trying to access. And we're going to be doing document reference.read. I also put binary in there in case you needed it, and patient.read and OpenID. The one thing you need to do to make, if you're following along and actually want this to work for you, this redirect URI, you need to change this part here to your actual URL at your REPL. Otherwise, what's going to happen is the patient's going to log in, authorize the app, and it's going to send them back to mine, right? So none of your changes are really going to take effect, right? So all you got to do is go over here, copy, and then paste. But keep the app.html because that's where kind of the rendering and getting the documents themselves is actually going to live. All right. But that is the one change you need to make, which is a lot easier than in prior meetups. So let's see here if we got it here. All right. And any questions on that before we launch it? So to launch it, just open a new tab. And you should see this lovely robot, which was stolen from Envato Elements, but I have their like little subscription thing. So in case you're wondering why there's a robot dressed up as a doctor wearing a chef's hat, it's from Envato Elements. So what happens is we ended up getting, so we started our app here, right? So we're gonna go to launch.html. It's gonna say, hey, I got this user who wants to log into the patient portal. Cool thing about Smart Health IT is it already fills out the user ID and a password. Apparently you can use any password. You click login. So I'm the patient, I'm logging in, and it says, hey, this application is requesting permission to read your profile information, the current patient and encounter selection in the EHR system, which is a little weird, your demographic information, this document reference and binary. And me as a patient, I would either do approve or deny. If I do deny, nothing's really going to happen. So we're going to hit approve. and saying, okay, let me hand this off to Jeff Bezos here and the money printing machine known as AWS. And if you look here, then we get this table, right? So this patient logged in, let's go look at network here. So they log in, they end up going to document reference here, see? So document reference gives them a document pack. There's one document there, and the content is, that's context, content. It's actually an attachment, which has this data. A lot of time in document reference, if there's data there, you'll see it as a base 64 encoded like string. So you got to decode that. All right. So what happened is it got this data, and then it actually, see if this is it. It posts it up to this little AWS API gateway thing that is hooked into Lambda. And then when it comes back down, it renders it. So, and we're going to go through that step by step, but that's kind of the overview of the whole app. So the patient approves, and you see something like this. And we're going to go through kind of bit by bit here what actually just happened, but any questions up to this point?
Kevin, so normally when, let's say you as a doctor, when you fill out the information, so let's just think of it kind of from a doctor perspective, you would write out your evaluation at that consult, right? So from an Epic, right, or Cerner, or whatever, we're grabbing that. Are we, in your mind, would it make more sense to selectively grab certain fields, certain pieces of information, or do you consider this to be used in bulk?
Yeah, I think it depends on your use case. Like if you went to, so you can search for, what is it, FHIR.Cerner. So if you go to Millennium, like for instance, in Cerner's thing, documents, document reference, they have different things you can search by, right? So you could search by the patient, the encounter, some time period, or the type of document, right? According to a loin code. Who knows what this loin code is? I am not clear on it. Consult note. So you could search for just consult notes. And you can say, just give me like 50 of them back. So like, I don't think it's so much like the provider, like the provider's workflow for these patient-facing apps is just like, you know, if your app is concerned with just discharge instructions or discharge summaries, then you would search by that LOINC, probably bounded by some period on a certain patient.
Yep, understood. That's how I envisioned it. So in other words, for like a patient, if it was patient facing, we would really have to do maybe 5 to 10 AWS queries to selectively tease out the information that you wrote on for, let's say, discharge and that type of stuff.
Yeah, what you could do is just query for all the, you know, if you want the HMP and the discharge stuff and all the consult notes, you can usually put these different types together with like a comma and then just get those back. And depending on how you set up like your API gateway and your Lambda, like you could have it run through all those, like get the entities from all those different documents as like one request, or you could send sequential ones.
Okay.
This was just, you know, like, this was just like, hey, there's one document. We're just going to pick a random document and send it up.
Yeah.
Get some stuff back, just kind of to show proof of concept.
Yep. No, I appreciate that. That's fabulous. Thank you.
And Nick also has his hand raised.
So quick question about the document type in that was returned for the patient.
Yes.
It's base 64 encoded, but is the underlying data, because you sent that to Lambda that uses Comprehend,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So is it, I thought that Comprehend just uses, it has to have JSON.
Yeah. That's a good question, because you're like, like what just happened there?
Yeah, so is it like a
Like,
JSON file?
So the way I set it up, I'll show you here, is I'll just take it from app.html and I'll show you kind of the AWS thing that I set up.
Yeah.
It's just, you could probably set it up in a bazillion different ways. So the app itself, it uses FHIR client, which kind of abstracts away Oauth 2 complexity for you. There's a little, what's that? Which is
great.
Yeah. A little jQuery, because I grew up during jQuery and I don't know if people still use it. It's bloated, whatever. I started making this actually with Cerner, but then I realized that it became like too much to do in an hour. So here's a link to Pdfjs if you wanted to extract text. There's some little style here, like the image gets styled. There's some, like padding and whatnot. All right. In the body, there's something called robot, and that has that robot picture. And then it has some robot talk span, which is essentially this little guy here. Like if we go here, it's robot talk. And then there's a table that's just called main, right? Which is this table right here, where all that stuff goes in. That comes back from AWS. So when the page loads, it makes this little global called my app, which just kind of helps to not pollute the global scope. Then it does, the FHIR client does FHIR Oauth 2. When that's ready, what we're going to do is catch what's coming back as myapp.smart. So if you go over here and you go to console, let me see if I can clear that. My app, that was the actual note that was there that I just cleared, but we'll look at that in a sec. My app, that's smart. What it has a lot of interesting stuff, the way the Boston Children's people set it up. It has something called state, which has like the server URL. So if you need to get back to the server address, like you can get that there. The token response, it'll give you the access token, the client ID, the encounter, if it knows it, the ID token, a refresh token, the patient. Usually it gives you the patient identifier and patient as well, and that's who we logged in as. And I guess it's giving you the encounter ID as well. Although typically, like in the patient portal, you wouldn't know what encounter it's opened on because usually that's something that's provider centric, but it's here. We can also get some information. I think it may have been an error on my part when I set up the little URL for Smart Health IT. There's also a user identifier, like who it is, and that should probably equal the patient.
Maybe this allows this is an app that allows a patient to add to their own note live in an EHR. There you go.
Yeah, usually they don't like the, I'm just gonna throw my own comments in.
I don't want that to happen.
I'm gonna put my Notion document inside of my own medical information. So essentially when you use FHIR client and you get this client back, you can cache it somewhere. And it's important to do that so that you have access to like the server URL and like who's logged in and what patient this is. Then it does this little do request thing, right? So do requests, robot talk says, I'm getting your documents. So the way I do this, and there's some methods inside of FHIR client to just get data, but I just do a fetch because I find it super easy. And I just go to that server URL and I say document reference. I want 100 of you about this person, right? To do that, you got to have some headers, right? So the headers are pretty simple. It's accept application JSON plus FHIR, and authorization is a bearer token plus that access token, right? Then return the data. So what you can use is use fetches, everything, at least it seems like that comes back with fetch, you can do to JSON. So you wait for the JSON to come back. And then robot talk says, I got your documents from document reference.
Oh, so hold on. Are you saying that you're just accepting JSONs back?
Usually JSON comes back from like the FHIR server, like fairly typically. I think some of them can do XML, but most of the time I've seen JSON, but I think you can do XML.
Yeah, you can do XML, but like 90% of the servers is JSON.
JSON.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
what?
sorry. I was asking a different question. I thought you were literally just saying, only give me document references with JSON. I completely
Oh, no,
not
no, no,
paying
no,
attention.
no.
No, forget that. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. It's basically for when like this
Disregard.
network request comes back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what you're getting back is JSON there, right?
I would hope it's JSON, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I do is I make this little variable saying this is what's going to go out, outgoing. It's this response, which is what came back from the FHIR server, entry 0. So I'm just picking the first entry. Resource, content, attachment, data, right? So if you look here from what came back, there's usually an entry, which is an array. We're just getting the first one. There's usually something called resource, content, content 0, attachment, and then data. So happens that that's base64 encoded, and you can use ATOB, kind of decode that. I replaced all the line breaks because it seemed to be messing stuff up with just like a space. And then I log that in the console and I call processing text, right? So the actual note itself, let's see if we can reload it, is chief complaint, altered mental status, 36-year-old male with an unknown past medical history brought to ED with a new onset altered mental status. History is taken by a significant other. She reports, this is just some like fake H&P that I actually had someone make for me.
So this is the base64 encoded data, it's just plain text.
Yeah, that's what yeah. But so you'll see this as HTML, like at least in Epic, I've seen it as HTML. Yep. You'll see it as PDFs very frequently too.
That's what I've seen. Yeah, a lot.
So then you got to add an extra step of like, you know, like I know Google's NLP will take HTML and kind of deal with it. I'm not sure about AWS Comprehend. I think it needs to be plain text, but I'm not 100%. Zaid probably knows a little more than me on that, if I had to guess. Yeah, essentially the way I set this up is it's plain text that's coming back, and it's that H&P. The interesting thing about Smart Health IT is, you know, you can actually create a document in it at will, and they clear them out every day. So on that notion.patient.dev, there's actually an example of doing that if you're interested for bonus. So then we're going to process. It says, okay, let me hand this off to Jeff Bezos and the money printing machine known as AWS. It's another fetch, happens to be a post. I have API gateway set up that just proxies to a Lambda that just gives it the information and then gives it some JSON back. So the way I set this up is this is an API gateway. There's a post, there's an API key, which at some point I'm probably gonna have to remove on the public notion. And it gives it that text, which was incoming, outgoing, incoming. Then it's going to wait for the response. And then it says, here are my thoughts. And it goes and it makes some table rows with the text, the category, the type, and the score. And it just appends it to the DOM. And that's how you end up getting to there. If you get a little messed up when you're trying to do this, in the Notion, I did include the documentation to AWS Medical Comprehend. And this is what we just saw with that API key. If you're looking for how to do the Lambda, which took me a little bit of time, this is actually how you can do it in some of the JavaScript inside of Lambda. It's actually fairly straightforward. Like I think Nick was saying, you know, the Medical Comprehend detect entities v2 does take an object that has a key of text, and then you need to give it the text, right? So I handle that right there inside the Lambda itself, and then it just returns that response from whatever came back from detect entities. One thing that messed me up was like, if you don't add the, have a permission policy for Comprehend Medical in your Lambda, it's not gonna work, and you're just gonna bang your head against the wall. So make sure that whatever Lambda you use, if you're using Lambda, has permissions to run Comprehend Medical. And that was the app. rendering the result there. You know, it found altered mental status. It thinks it's a medical condition. That's a diagnosis name. 36-year-old is an age, and it thinks it's protected health information. Seems like the score is really high. ED, it thinks is protected health information and an address, which is kind of interesting, you know, because it was a 36-year-old male with unknown past medical history presents to the ED. I would think that might be like a diagnosis, you know, if it were going to misread it as like maybe, you know, you need some Viagra or something like that. But for some reason, it thinks it's protected health information address. Altered mental status, medical condition, diagnosis name, fevers, diagnosis name, time to diagnosis. So I think it was fevers for the last week, right? 36-year-old male, past ED with new onset altered mental status, history statement, reports suffering fevers for the last week. So pretty cool. Does some of it, you know, there is that one error there that I saw. But you know, there's something there. I'm not exactly sure 100% what you use it for, but it is interesting that you can like automate it and like extract these terms with some degree of accuracy.
And this can help you like prepare a data set for a model. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I know we only have a few more minutes here. If you want to make a fake medical document, like create a note, there's a link there. But if you like, if you try to do this tomorrow, like this probably won't work in your REPL. Like you have to create a new note each day in Smart Health IT because it seems like they get cleared out every day. But if you're interested in doing that, just go to, essentially, you post something base64 encoded from this REPL. And it's actually pretty slick because lets you log in as the doc, and then you got this and you can just create a note and you can put whatever you want there.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Do you know if there is a place that has like really easily accessible, de-identified or otherwise synthetic and fake patient records?
Yeah, are you looking for notes or for just like
all the things, like as if it were a real EHR at a hospital?
So there's this thing, Cynthia. Let's see if, oh gosh. Come on, Google. MITRE Cynthia.
That's right.
Yeah. Also, if you go to launch.smarthealthit.org, this is where I constructed that URL, and they have this patient browser. So they probably have like 1,000 patients in here. And we were using this patient actually here, I believe. And if you look in document reference, that note is actually here. And there's our base64 encoded thing. And if you actually just, is it BTO?
I'd be so interested to see if Cynthia has a lot of, you know, poorly scanned fax documents that we can deal with like a real world scenario.
I think it lacks those. There is so you need to be like a researcher, but the NIH does have there's a data set from their ICUs. If you write me an email at patient.dev, like kevin@patient.dev, I'll remember where it is, but it's probably like 1,000 patient de-identified ICU notes or something like that.
I love it.
But you gotta like agree to a data use agreement because it's like for research. So, and Sandeep Pullum, whoa.
Hey, Kevin, I was just listening in. I just shared a link to, so I was sitting in on that FHIR API announcement that Redox put out. So on April 26th, they're going to make 300,000 synthetic patient records available for FHIR.
There you go.
Whoa, sorry, I was taking notes on what Kevin just said and I missed what you just said. Can you say it one more time?
I shared a link to that. Redox had a pre-announcement of their new FHIR API initiative. So on April 26th, they're going to release a sandbox with 300,000 synthetic patient records via FHIR API.
Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting. Okay,
Nice.
cool. Thank you.
Sandeep is in the know. I don't know if you listen to him on Clubhouse.
Oh gosh, I don't want to wish Clubhouse on anyone. I'm just.
I can't even do that because I have an Android. I have the
same.
Google
I'm in the
phone.
same boat.
Yeah,
When are they gonna bring it?
That's the biggest complaint on Clubhouse. Like, when is Android coming out?
Kevin, quick question. Very cool demo. How's it going? I was going to ask you, so what's your impression of the AWS pricing for that Comprehend? Did you see some fees? Was that about a $10 turn up that you just did or what?
Oh, no. I think that was like 1 or 2 cents or something. Like, I don't think it was more than a cent or two, probably with API Gateway and Lambda and Comprehend. Interestingly, I've been doing more stuff with Google's NLP because I think Google's is a little better, but I haven't been using their medical stuff. But if you look at the pricing for Google's, at least their NLP non-medical, you can do like, I think it's like 1,000 for free each month or something like that. So it's actually the cool thing about Google's NLP is it hooks you into their knowledge graph. So like if you query for, if it says, hey, that person has altered mental status and there's a Wikipedia page about altered mental status, it'll give you the link to the Wikipedia page about altered mental status, as well as identify, that altered mental status is a diagnosis or something like that. So the answer to the question is, my impression is it isn't very pricey to do AWS Medical Comprehend, at least in kind of my experience. But I'm probably migrating more stuff to Google. It's like my next thing to learn, because it's really fascinating when you're able to hook into their knowledge graph as well, which I didn't see in AWS.
Sounds like we got a Google demo coming up real soon. Then.
Oh yes, yeah, you can do it, Tony. I got faith in you. All right. I know we went a little over here, but feel free to reach out to me or send the meetup a ping if you got any questions. And let me know if somebody wants to like talk at the next one, show something you're doing, cover a subject that's interesting to you. It's a great opportunity to learn something, to like make something and then show it to other people. And we'll schedule another one of these, maybe in a month or so.
Cool.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for everything.
Hey, yeah.
Fantastic.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks,
See you later.
All right. So thank you everyone for joining today. Really quickly. So Kevin, thank you. We always thank you. We appreciate you for sharing so much. That concludes our AI enhanced FHIR app talk.